Walker Little is one phone call away from being a Commander, and Adam Peters wants this locked before the weekend's out. Here's why it's happening. Laramie Tunsil tore his triceps, and sources out of Ashburn say he's done for the year, but the O-line ain't the only fire burning. The center spot is still a mess, and Dan Quinn just said the quiet part out loud about Julian Good-Jones. And there's a 7th round QB straight up earning his roster spot in cold blood. Raise hail. Let's get straight to it, family, because this is what all of Command Country should be talking about today. Jacksonville has Walker Little on their roster, a left tackle with real starting experience in this league, and there is a trade floating around right now with a real name and real numbers sitting on Adam Peters' desk. Little signed a 3-year extension that leaves him with a cap hit of $14.5 million this year and $15.55 million next year. The problem for Jacksonville is that Little got bumped to backup behind Cole Van Lanen, who won the starting job and then signed his own extension on top of it. That means the Jaguars have $15 million sitting on their bench, and for any general manager in this league, that is money screaming to be moved. The proposal floating around is simple. Washington sends a 2027 6th round pick, Jacksonville sends back Walker Little and a 2027 7th round pick. Washington absorbs the full contract, but in return gets a tackle with real NFL mileage, someone who can compete evenly for the starting job on the offensive line. To understand why this trade exists, why it came out of nowhere this week, we need to talk about what happened in camp. I need everybody to sit down for a second because this one genuinely hurts. Laramie Tunsil, the highest paid left tackle in league history at his position, the guy Adam Peters brought in with a package of 4 picks and then handed the largest contract extension ever given to an offensive tackle, tore his triceps in a training camp practice. He has already had surgery. And according to what Albert BREER of Sports Illustrated revealed, after spending time inside Commanders training camp recently, Dan Quinn is working inside the building on the premise that Tunsil does not come back at all in 2026. Not a week, not a month, the entire season. He might return if the team makes the playoffs, but that is more of a hope than an actual plan. Let me put this in context for you, because there are people out there who still do not understand the size of this blow. Washington paid Tunsil $30 million a year this offseason, a 2-year extension worth $60.2 million with $61.5 million guaranteed. That made him the first offensive lineman in NFL history to average $30 million a year. This is not just another player. For me, he is the best player on the entire roster, above Terry McLaurin, above Darren Payne, and yes, I know I am going to get roasted in the comments, but I stand by it. An elite left tackle protecting your franchise quarterback's blindside is worth more than any other single piece on this team, because without that, you do not have a team. You have Jaden Daniels dodging rushers all Sunday long and ending the season on a stretcher. And here is the tactical part that genuinely worries me. Tunsil gives David Blau extra time to design the passing scheme and gives Jaden that extra second standing in the pocket looking for the deep read instead of scrambling in a panic. When you lose your franchise left tackle, you lose protection, you lose offensive flexibility, and you lose your quarterback's ability to trust the pocket. And for a QB who is just entering year 3 of the system, that is a hit that gets felt on every single snap. That is exactly why this Jacksonville trade went from a hallway rumor to an urgent need in a matter of days. Now, who is handling the position in the meantime? Brandon Coleman, the 2024 3rd round pick, who was actually competing for the left guard spot before Tunsil's injury. Camp reports say Coleman's transition to left tackle has been better than expected, and honestly, that is the only genuinely positive thing I have for you about the current situation. But let us be honest with each other. It is one thing for a second-year lineman to have a good stretch in camp against defenses that have not installed their full blitz packages yet. It is a completely different thing to hold that level against Micah Parsons, against Myles Garrett, against the real edge rushers he is going to face during the regular season. I want to believe in Coleman, but wanting to believe is not the same thing as trusting, and that is exactly why the little trade becomes the insurance policy this roster needs if Coleman slips. Here is my opinion, and I know not everyone is going to like it. I would close this trade tomorrow morning, not next week. Tomorrow, because Washington opens the season on the road against Philadelphia, then travels to Dallas, back-to-back division road games against 2 of the best defensive fronts in the conference. If Coleman slips, if he has a rough night protecting Jaden Daniels against Philly in week 1, it is already too late to go find an emergency tackle on the waiver market. The good ones are already gone. Look, I could be wrong, but for me, this is a full season insurance policy for Jaden Daniels' career, not some weekend luxury purchase. Now, there is a counter argument I also want to put on the table, because it would be dishonest of me to ignore it. Walker Little is not an elite left tackle. He is a solid, middle-of-the-road NFL starter, not someone who replaces what Tunsil gave you at his best. If Washington pays draft capital for Little and Coleman ends up winning the job anyway, you just spent a pick on an expensive backup, and on a roster that still has holes in other spots, every pick counts. That is a fair argument, but I would rather pay that opportunity cost and have real competition at the single most important spot on the offensive line than pray and find out live in Philadelphia on whether Brandon Coleman is ready or not. And I want to dig a little deeper into the draft capital angle, because I think that is where the real key to this decision sits. Remember, to bring Tunsil over from Houston, Washington already gave up 4 picks, including a 2nd and a 4th rounder this same year, 2026. That means Adam Peters walks into this negotiation with Jacksonville with less room to maneuver than he had 2 years ago. Paying just a 6th rounder in 2027 for Walker Little is a steal if it works out. But if Jacksonville smells desperation from Washington, and they will, because everyone in this league knows what losing Tunsil means, the price could climb to a 4th round pick before the week is out, and that is where Peters has to show discipline. Overpaying out of panic is just as dangerous as refusing to pay out of pride. It is a thin line, and it is going to come down to how fast Washington moves. And there is one more thing I want to say, because there is something bigger than football at stake here. What this franchise actually stands for right now. Adam Peters has spent 2 years building patiently, avoiding desperate moves, letting the roster grow organically. But there comes a moment in every general manager's career where you have to decide whether you are loyal to your philosophy or loyal to your championship window. Jaden Daniels is 25 years old, he is in his prime, and this league does not hand out eternal championship windows. If Peters lets this opportunity pass to reinforce his franchise quarterback's blindside because he is attached to a plan that no longer fits the current reality of this roster, for me that would be the first real management mistake of his career in Washington. Alright fam, I needed that little breather between one heavy story and another, but there is not much breathing room today because the center problem is still unsolved. And this time it was Dan Quinn himself who admitted it publicly, which this coach almost never does. Let's get the context straight. Washington cut Tyler Biadasz this offseason, a reliable veteran center, and bet that Nick Allegretti, who played guard for most of his career with only 2 career starts at center across 7 seasons in the league, could make the transition without drama. The problem is Allegretti strained his calf on the very first day of camp and never really got his rhythm back since. He re-injured that same area recently, which kept him out of the Detroit game. So who stepped in? Julian Good-Jones. And bro, I am not going to soften this. It was a rough night. He nearly gave up a sack on his very first snap of the game. His PFF numbers improved slightly compared to the previous game against Miami, but he committed 2 penalties that tanked his overall grade. They also put in 6th round rookie Matt Golban, who between the 2 of them combined have literally 2 career NFL snaps before this camp even started. And here is the sentence that changed everything. For weeks, Dan Quinn had been calling this a competition. Competition implies there are even options fighting for a spot, that the talent level is reasonable, and it just takes time for someone to separate. But after the Detroit game, Quinn changed his language. He admitted the team still has work to do to figure out where we want to get to at center. Fam, that is not the sentence of a coach who has a solid plan B waiting on the bench. That is the sentence of a coach who is desperately searching for help and not finding it inside the building. And it is not that Quinn is blind to the good things happening elsewhere on the line, by the way. He specifically praised how Josh Connerly and Sam Cosmi are playing on the right side, said Cosmi might be having his best camp since Quinn arrived as head coach. That contrast feels brutal to me. You have 2/3 of your offensive line playing at an elite level, and the center, the single position that literally starts every play, remains a question mark days before the regular season begins. And this connects directly back to story 1. It is the same offensive line bleeding on 2 fronts at the exact same time. You lost your franchise left tackle and you still have not solved center. That combination for any opposing defensive coordinator is a blitz party waiting to happen. Now, there are two paths floating around right now to fix this, and I want to break them down with you one by one. The first one is external. Graham Glasgow, a 10-year veteran, 6'6", 315 pounds, cut by Detroit earlier this year in a cost-cutting move. He was streaming on Twitch over the weekend. Someone asked him about Washington, and Glasgow said word for word, if they gave me a call, I'd entertain it. 147 career games played, 136 of them as a starter between guard and center. He is not the magic fix, he is not in his prime anymore, but he is exactly the kind of steady veteran who gives stability to a rookie or a player in transition when things get chaotic mid-game. He was also a former teammate of David Blau in Detroit, so there is already a relationship inside the building. For me, that call gets made today. It costs nothing to try. The second path is internal, and this one honestly feels like the smartest move Adam Peters has on the table. Use the wide receiver surplus to solve the center problem through a trade. Think about the receiver room Washington has right now. Terry McLaurin, total lock. Stephon Diggs, total lock. Antonio Williams, the third-round rookie, total lock. Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey have too much special teams value to even touch. That leaves you with Treylon Burks, Diami Brown, Van Jefferson Jr., Jaden Bradley, and Jacoby Jones fighting for one or two spots at most. Not everyone makes this roster, and that is exactly the opportunity. If Peters finds a team with a surplus at center and a need at receiver, there is a player-for-player trade sitting right there that solves two problems at once without spending a single draft pick. My personal take here is clear. I would take this route 1,000 times over, going out and signing an emergency free agent at inflated prices. Peters has built this roster avoiding trades all offseason, but like I said in story 1, there comes a moment when philosophy has to bend to necessity. And this necessity, bro, is urgent. We are days away from the final roster cutdown, then comes the joint practice with Baltimore, then the final preseason game against the Ravens on August 28th. Those are the last two real evaluation windows before the season actually starts in Philadelphia. And there is one more layer to this that I want you to understand because it goes beyond who takes the snap. The center is not just the guy who starts the play, he is the one making protection calls on the line, the one adjusting the blocking scheme based on how the defense lines up before the snap. An experienced center reads the front and communicates adjustments in about a second and a half. A 6th round rookie or a guard in transition is still processing that read while the play clock keeps ticking. That partly explains why Quinn admitted the running game left a lot to be desired against Detroit. It is not just that the running back could not find the hole, the communication on the line is not synced up yet, and that kind of sync in the NFL gets built through real reps, not camp promises. And if none of this happens, then Washington walks into week 1 with either Julian Good-Jones or a 6th round rookie protecting the center snap that starts every single offensive play against a Philadelphia defensive front that is going to send interior pressure with zero mercy. And honestly, that is a scene that gives me chills just thinking about it. And to close things out, something that actually puts a smile on my face after all this heavy news. Athan Kaliakmanis, a 7th round draft pick, a quarterback who split his college career between Minnesota and Rutgers, is earning himself the 3rd string quarterback spot on Washington's roster through pure grind. And bro, nobody had this on their radar back in April. Let's go to the numbers because this kid has been consistent, and for a bottom of the roster quarterback, that alone is a signal worth paying attention to. Against Detroit this past weekend, he completed 11 of 14 passes for 162 yards, 0 sacks, and outgained every other Washington quarterback who played in that game. That was a clear improvement compared to his preseason debut against Miami, where he went 6 of 10 for 87 yards with 2 sacks. Over his last 2 combined preseason games, Kaliakmanis is tied for 9th in the entire league in completion percentage among quarterbacks with at least 24 attempts, with a passer rating of 104.3. Now, let's be honest about what Kaliakmanis is not. He does not have Jaden Daniels' mobility, or Marcus Mariota's for that matter. He is not going to escape the pocket on a 20-yard explosive run. His arm is accurate, but it is not a cannon. What he does have, and this is what I find most valuable, is a calm confidence inside the chaos. Dan Quinn said it himself after the Miami game, that he was pleased to see him in the chaos. He added that the rookie looked calm even as everything around him was falling apart. For a 7th round quarterback in his very first professional camp, that is not a small thing. The speed of the NFL breaks most rookies, and Kaliakmanis is showing he can process quickly even when his protection is falling apart around him. There is one specific play I want to highlight because it shows something about his character as a player. In the third quarter against Detroit, with a safety closing in on coverage, Kaliakmanis threw a deep shot to Jaden Bradley that ended in a 30-yard one-handed catch as the receiver was falling to the ground. After the game, Kaliakmanis gave all the credit to his teammate instead of selling his own arm, said something along the lines of always trusting his receivers and giving them a shot to make the play. That kind of mentality, giving the opportunity instead of holding onto the ball out of fear of making a mistake, is exactly what separates bench quarterbacks from the ones who eventually end up playing meaningful snaps when the starter goes down. The real competition is against Sam Hartman. And according to what is being reported from inside the building, this could come down to the final day before cuts. Both of them are going to get real opportunities this week in the joint practice with Baltimore, and in the final preseason game. If Quinn is leaning one way or another, he is not showing it publicly, and honestly I think that is genuine, not some poker strategy. Both players have things to like, and the coach is waiting to see who manages the clock better, who handles a real pressure situation, things that simply do not replicate in practice. My personal opinion, I am going with Kaliakmanis, not because Hartman is bad, but because what I am seeing from Kaliakmanis is real game-to-game progression, not an isolated spike. He improved his completion rate, he improved his ball security, and most importantly to me, he improved his blitz recognition under real pressure against an NFL starting roster, even if it is only preseason. And with Marcus Mariota still in the picture as the #1 backup, but without full health guarantees across a full 16 or 17 game season, having a reliable third quarterback stopped being a luxury and became a real necessity for this franchise. Look, I could be wrong, the sample size is still small, but for now, this kid earned my respect. And that's everything we have for you today, family, and I know we started off heavy. Losing Laremy Tunsil hurts. It genuinely hurts. And I am not going to lie to anyone by pretending this does not change the conversation around this season, but I am also going to tell you this straight from the chest. Has a general knows how to make tough decisions, and this week with the Walker Little trade on the table and real options to fix the center, we are going to find out what Adam Peters is really made of. Jaden's window is open right now, and windows in this league do not wait for anybody. Kaliakmanis gave us a smile in the middle of all this drama, and personally, I love finding stories like that in the middle of chaos, because that is what makes this sport beautiful. You already know what it is. If this video gave you something, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments. Should Adam Peters close the Walker Little trade this week, or do you trust Brandon Coleman with your eyes closed? I want to read every single answer, for real. See you in the next one. Always, raise hail.